Welcome to another OU Insider Under the Visor YouTube Live. My name is Brandon Drumm. I am here in my house while Parker Thune has stopped. Where the hell did you stop at? I guess that's the key. Where are you at?
This is the lengths to which we go to bring you all creative, live, and constant content. I am currently parked outside of Love's Travel Stop in Belleville, Kansas, in my 2001 Ford Taurus. I'm using my laptop webcam that has been hot-spotted by my iPhone, which is doubling as a flashlight to keep my face illuminated. So yeah, this is the pinnacle of broadcasting excellence right here. Thank you all so much for being a part of this. What would you categorize it as?
Momentous,
groundbreaking,
momentous and groundbreaking piece of links that you go through to, or that we all go through. Because I remember we podcasted one time while driving down the road too. People don't realize that true. Before.
This is the advent of the new age of journalism, ladies and gentlemen. You are witnessing history.
Gabe Eichert is loving the fact that you gave Loves a shout out, considering that's, you know,
I'm sure he is. He probably made a couple $100 just when I said the word Loves.
His favorite, what is the latte called that he loves?
I don't know.
I can't. I just know that somebody in the chat will know the latte that Gabe Eichert loves from Loves.
If you start to see me perspiring visibly, it's because it's hot in this car. But hey,
do you not have your car on?
No, I don't have my car on.
What? Why?
Brandon, I drive a 2001 Ford Taurus. Okay. This thing's held together by a shoestring.
Fair enough.
I want to keep it either off or driving at all times. So that's where we're at with this vehicle.
Java Amore, by the way, is what it's called, according to the chat. So, all right. Well, guess what? Oklahoma won 33-3 last week. I think we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about the Kent State game first, and then we'll get into Colton Vasek, Malachi Coleman, David Hicks, Jordan Renaud, and then Nebraska, as Spencer eloquently put it before, when we were talking about our production before we got on here today. So, yeah, look, Oklahoma won 33-3 last week after a tumultuous, I think is probably the best way to put it, start for the first quarter and 3/4 of the game before, well, it was more than that. It was like a quarter and like 9/10 of the first half before Oklahoma got on the board with 26 seconds left in the first half with a bomb to one Marvin Mims from Dylan Gabriel. Look, that was a rough start, but anybody that wants to talk about the first half has to talk about how great the second half was, and that was pure dominance. That was the defense dominated start to finish, Parker. Start to finish, dominant. They are first in tackles for loss, third in sacks. This is talking about not Big 12, all of college football, folks. And they are first, and I think, number of touchdowns given up to start the season with only one, and that was against UTEP. So not a bad start for Brent Venables' defense. Everybody wanted a defense. He brought it earlier than even we expected it to happen. Offensively, I was watching Joe John Finley earlier, Parker, talk about on the coaches show, the Coaches Corner show, with our man Chris Platt and Chris Plank,
Plank.
And yeah, Chris Plank and Gabe Eichert. Yeah, I mean, that'd be pretty cool if that was him. And Gabe Eichert and Joe John said that all it was a little schematic issue as far as how they were blocking. because Kent State, and Venables said the same thing in his post-game presser, and he said it again today in the weekly presser. They fixed some things, and that's what made them so dominant on the offensive line in the second half. They didn't have issues in the second half because of everything that they fixed schematically. Became very aggressive, very dominant, very the same play as I believe Jeff Lebby. I asked the question, and Jeff Lebby said the same play that they ran multiple times in the first half that Eric Gray gained 4 yards when they changed the schematics of the blocking up because of how Kent State was trying to disguise what they were doing. He gained 60. I mean, it was like, it was night and day difference between how the offensive line, and look, we all know the offensive line struggled a little bit against UTEP, That's a given. They struggled in the first half of Kent State, but it looked like everything kind of got ironed out, Parker, in the second half. The addition of Juanny Morris, the addition again of Robert Conjal being able to come in off the bench or start, whether he takes Matuire's spot. We don't know if that's going to happen, but Matuire's first 2 games, you would think there might be him or Savion Byrd might be able to start in his place. But the addition of those guys, being able to now be able to move Tyler Guyton around, being able to move Jacob Sexton, Jake Taylor around a little bit more, should add some more cohesiveness to that offensive line. And they should be better against a Nebraska defensive line that has just been abused by their first 2 opponents, Northwestern and Georgia Southern, this year.
Yeah, exactly, Brandon. And you touched on the most important thing right there. If the Sooners offensive line doesn't dominate the trenches this weekend, then there are problems. And we should take those problems seriously because Nebraska has been gashed by the run game thus far this season. 115th out of 131 FBS programs in terms of rushing yards allowed. And when you consider the fact that they've played Northwestern, North Dakota, and Georgia Southern, that makes that statistic all the more ignominious. And so you would expect that Oklahoma shows up to Lincoln on Saturday, establishes the run from the get-go, and dominates up front. That has to happen because the play has been shoddy at times over the first couple of weeks, but it hasn't been all bad. There's been both good and bad, and you have to acknowledge the good as well as the bad. The Sooners have played good ball in the trenches at times, but it's about cultivating consistency, and it's about manhandling opponents that you should manhandle. The harsh reality is you're not going to be able to get away with not adjusting to a schematic issue up front until halftime against Nebraska. Against a team like that, particularly playing in a rowdy home environment, the way that Memorial Stadium will be this weekend, the Sooners are not going to be able to waltz in there and go scoreless for 29 minutes the way that they did against Kent State. That's going to have to change, and that starts with the play of the offensive line. You get Juanny Morris back. That's big time. That should be a huge benefit to the Sooners in terms of their ability to both protect Dillon Gabriel and pave those lanes for Eric Gray, Marcus Major, and Javante Barnes. So my expectation is that the Sooners' mission from the get-go on Saturday is to establish the run, because you'd have to imagine that Jeff Lebby has done his scouting and he knows just how inept this Nebraska defense is against the run. And he admitted it in his Monday press conference. He said, hey, I took too long to air it out with Dillon Gabriel last Saturday against Kent State. I should have adjusted faster. I should have been more liberal with my young quarterback and allowed him to sling the rock around a little bit more than I did in the first half. But that shouldn't be an issue this weekend against Nebraska. You should be able to establish a consistent run game, and you should be able to move the chains on the ground. Again, if that doesn't happen, then Houston, we have a problem.
It's more, I think it's worse than, I don't know if it's going to be worse than Apollo 13, but yeah. There's some issues going on there. Juanny Morris, to me, I think is the key. They talked him up so much during the fall camp that you can't help but kind of give a pass a little bit, right? Like, and that's not something we want to do. We don't want to give the O-line a pass for shoddy play. But when it's such a cohesive unit, right? And when you work out and you practice and you train next to somebody for 35, 40 days, and now they're not able to be there for you come week one, and you've got to get used to somebody else, that is an issue. That's going to normally be an issue. Now, not always. Sometimes you can fill in and it never skips a beat. But I think when you have a new system, it was just, I think, a perfect storm for there to be some hiccups. And we said there was going to be hiccups to start the season. Like, there was no way there wasn't going to be hiccups to start the season. And if this is the hiccups that Oklahoma has, is having to tinker with some schemes here or there before they completely dominate their opponent, I think come December, Oklahoma fans will be all right with that, because that means they're going to win a bunch of games. If they're able to adjust each and every week, and that defense can hold opponents to where Oklahoma is always within striking distance, a la Clemson of the past few years, even their national title run years, a la Ohio State of 2002, a la Oklahoma of 2000, keep within striking distance. And then bam, there you go. That is going to be okay for you. I promise you that's going to be okay. And I think Juanny Morris is going to be the key this week. How he plays is probably the most important piece on the offense this week, because you can almost guarantee that Marvin Mims is going to show up. Eric Gray and Marcus Major are going to they're going to do their thing when they get a chance. Drake Stoops is going to do his thing. Braden Willis is going to do his thing. You expect Dylan Gabriel, who's thrown for now almost 9,000 yards in his career, should be able to do his thing. Is the offensive line going to allow them to do their thing? I think that is the key. Is Juanny Morris the missing piece? And I think every Oklahoma fan's looking towards the former 5-star going, okay, this is your time to shine. You've got, what has he got this year? And then he's got a super senior year next year, correct? And that's it. That's it. So he's got to start shining now if he wants to be that first-round draft pick that everybody projected him to be 4 years ago. And it's got to happen starting this week. At least that's my opinion. I don't know.
No, I'm with you. Yeah, no, I agree. And I think it's, to a certain extent, you don't want to put too much on one guy. Juanny Morris isn't going to be the fix-a-flat for this Oklahoma offensive line. Granted, he will be an upgrade, I think, over Tyler Guyton, just because he's played a lot more at that position. And that's one of the things you see kind of plaguing the Sooners' left side of the offensive line in particular the last couple of weeks is inexperience. Tyler Guyton is still a bit unfamiliar with where he needs to be and where he needs to get from the left tackle position. And McCade Mathier, for all that he did at Cal, had to learn a new system at Oklahoma, had to build new relationships with the guys he was lining up alongside. And that goes a long way too. Chemistry on the offensive line will carry a team. And some of the greatest offensive lines that Oklahoma has had in recent memory came with guys that had a lot of chemistry and played multiple years alongside one another together every single snap. And so because you have Mathier and Guyton on the same side and both relatively new to the operation, I think it's understandable that you've seen some struggles here and there. Now, the question is, how much does Juanny Morris fix those issues? Because for everything he was as a recruit, as ballyhooed as he was, and as much as he did at Tennessee over his first 2 collegiate seasons, he rode the bench last year for Oklahoma. And he has not yet started a game in a Sooner uniform. Obviously, the expectation is that that inaugural start is going to come this weekend against Nebraska, but you can't be having offensive line issues long term. So the hope is that Juanny Morris provides an answer. The hope is that his presence calms down McCade Mathier a little bit and helps him to settle in. If not, I think the fortunate thing is you have some depth there. You can throw in a guy like Robert Conjal or Savion Byrd or even Jake Taylor, the true freshman. And so that's one thing that Bill Bedenbaugh has never been afraid to do is shuffle the deck. And we may see that at a certain point. But I think the Sooners' best laid plans involve Anton Harrison and Juanny Morris at the tackles, McCade Matar and Chris Murray at the guards, and Andrew Rame at center. I think that offensive line offers you the most upside, especially when it comes to establishing the run early in games.
Oh yeah, no, I agree. I like, for me, I don't know that I like Matuire, just as a starter at this point, just because of what we've seen the first 2 weeks. I like Anton Harrison at left guard. Obviously, I don't know that McCade is the guy at left guard. I would do Savion Byrd at left guard, Andrew Rame, or Conjal. I could go Conjal. I'm okay with Conjal at left guard. I'm okay with that idea. Right guard, I would go, obviously, our man Chris Murray. Right tackle, Juanny, and obviously center Andrew Rame. That to me, I think, is probably, I don't know, that it may not be your most athletic offensive line, because I don't know that throwing Conjal in there adds athleticism, but it adds brains and it adds bronze. I think he's a guy that is going to bulldoze you, and he's going to know what's going on at all times. He's a smart offensive lineman. And he's always going to do what the scheme tells him to do. He's going to be at the right place at the right time. He's going to read the blitz. He's going to understand how he needs to block, what shade the defensive alignment in, and what that means he has to do, whether it's sidestep, push, whether he needs to reach. It doesn't matter. He's going to understand that and be okay. Well, that means this guy's got to do. Maybe I got to slide over and help if there's a guard pulling or guard or tackle pulling. That way they have enough time to get their slide help and then release to that second level type deal. So there's a lot of things that I think Conjal's going to understand that maybe Byrd won't grasp fully yet because he's so young and raw. But as far as upside, I don't think there's any better upside guy on the line than Mr. Savion Byrd. He's a freak. He's got a little attitude, a little bit of an attitude, always trying to fight people. You and I sit there and watch Loadholt have to console him for 10 minutes after the Kent State game, and he was pissed. Like, literally, Loadholt had to hold him down. And by the way, I knew Savion Byrd was a large human being, but he looked like almost eye to eye with Mr. Loadholt. That's a big man. That's a big man right there. So, yeah, I think they have depth. I think it's young, but it's talented. It's very talented. They've recruited really well and brought in some nice pieces as far as the transfer portal goes to really make that offensive line deep and talented. Experience, like you said, Parker, experience is going to be the issue. It's always going to be the issue. Second half, I think you got to talk about Danny Suchman, Reggie Grimes, and Billy Bowman, right? You have to. Have those three not been just unbelievable the first 2 weeks of Oklahoma's football season? 21 tackles already. 4 sacks for 21 tackles for Suchman, 4 sacks for Grimes, and I think 20 tackles for Bowman. My goodness.
No, you're exactly right, Brandon. You're exactly right. And I think those three have probably been, pound for pound, your best defensive players to date. Stutzman leads the team in tackles. Bowman is 1 behind him. And then Grimes has been a menace as far as his ability to rush the passer. And he was always a guy that had high physical upside, right? It just hadn't really materialized in terms of production. And there were reasons for that. He was stuck behind a guy who was pretty dang good himself in Isaiah Thomas, right? So it's understandable that we hadn't really seen it. We hadn't really seen Reggie Grimes truly flash yet. But for him to do what he has done over the first 2 weeks, and I get it, it's UTEP and Kent State, it's impressive. And it gives you a lot of optimism that between him, Ethan Downs, Marcus Stripling, and the youngin, R. Mason Thomas, the Sooners are going to have a pretty devastating pass rush down the line. And hopefully you have Stripling and Thomas back to full health here pretty expediently, because both of them were a little bit banged up against Kent State. But, man, you feel really good about what you've seen from Reggie Grimes. And I think the most refreshing thing is that I don't think there's much of a question that overall Ethan Downs is the best defensive end the Sooners have on the roster. And production-wise, he's barely done anything through 2 weeks. You know for a fact that's not going to last. You know for a fact there's
Right.
going to come a time at which Ethan Downs is going to get his. And once he does, again, we're talking about a devastating group of defensive ends.
Yeah, and look, Danny Stutzman, Venables is just he just gushes over Danny Stutzman. And I think he reminds him a lot of his Oklahoma linebackers of yesteryear. A lot of, and, he's not quite as big as Curtis Lofton, but I think he strikes you like Curtis Lofton did. Like Curtis Lofton would straight up tear your soul out when he hits you. And that's what Danny Stutzman does. He doesn't quite have the speed of Teddy Lehman, but he's a mixture of Rocky Kalmus and Teddy Lehman as far as how he moves. Because remember, he was a safety in high school. He didn't play a lot of linebacker in high school. They moved him safety, played him a little corner. I mean, he played everywhere for that small team private school that he came out of in Orlando. And so, and I visited there, man. That thing, like the stadium literally looked like it was a Class A stadium in Oklahoma. Like that's how big it was. I mean, he just was a man amongst boys in that league. So I don't know that he's super fast, but he's a high 4.5, 4.6 type guy. So he gets out there and runs kind of like Rocky did. But I think he has the intellect that Teddy Lehman has too, where he understands things. There was a play they call the blitz, and you could see it. They call the blitz for Danny Stutzman, but the play was going to be popped outside. So basically, Kent State knew exactly what Venables and them were doing, and they called it. And I think it was in the third quarter, and they called a check. And instead of running up the A gap, they called a sweep, basically an outside off tackle. We would call 28, basically, for those that understand that, up the outside the A gap or the E gap, whatever you want to call it. And he read it. He knew exactly what they did. So instead of going, he goes parallel down the line through trash and makes a tackle with a slight angle in the backfield for like a 1.5 yard loss. And that to me epitomizes what he has up here. And that's what's making him great. And Venables challenged him. Remember the question I asked him last week? He challenged Stutzman, and Stutzman stepped up to the challenge. And if he can keep doing that all year, I mean, am I crazy to say that with how he started, that you could be looking at least a Butkus semifinalist if he keeps with his trajectory? At least.
No, you're not crazy at all. And I was thinking about that earlier today, because it occurred to me that, oh shoot, this guy's averaging double-digit tackles through 2 games, and he's going to play a lot more snaps in each of the games that follow than he did against UTEP and Kent State, solely because you'd expect that the Sooners aren't going to be pulling their starters in the fourth quarter in conference play. If they are, great. It means they're winning games by a lot of points, but you'd expect he's going to get even more run than he did through the first 2 weeks. So the fact that he's sitting at 21 tackles through 2 games, if you want to extrapolate that and you want to project what he might be at total come the end of the regular season, you're talking about a guy that could rack up 130, 140 tackles. And that's not at all out of the realm of possibility. And you mentioned it, but I think what makes Stutzman so impressive, and I think what's going to cause analysts and pundits to fall in love with him, is exactly what you said. The fact that he hits so hard, man, every single time. He's not out there just to tackle you. He's out there to destroy you every single time. And so, yeah, I'm really excited to see what the rest of his season looks like and whether he can continue to be the anchor in that Sooner linebacker core. And man, it's between him at the second level there and the defensive ends up front. You know, you got solid interior play with Jalen Redmond and Jeffrey Johnson. It's all about the secondary at this point, man. And as long as the secondary is adequate, they don't even need to be elite. If they can be adequate in 2022, that starts with the play of Billy Bowman at safety. I think that starts with the play of Woody Washington at corner. If they can be adequate or better in 2022, this Sooners is going to give other teams a lot of problems. And there will be teams that struggle to move the ball.
No doubt. Look, hey, I want to say this. Reading the chat here real quick. There's nobody in this whole thing that will know that doesn't know Teddy Lehman's speed than I do, because I was the one standing in line behind him when he ran. It's 4.3, 4.4, whatever the heck it was. I think it was 4.41 at Oklahoma's camp. I think it was 2000 and or 99. Can't remember what the exact year was, but Wes Welker was there, Wes Sims was there, Jason White was there, so it had to be 99. And I'm telling you all right now, that guy could fly. He told everybody he was going to run, by the way. He's I'm gonna run at least a 4.4. And nobody believed him. And next thing you know, they stop the camp. He runs it again. All the coaches come over and monitor, like they're all standing over there. Boom, boom, boom. Next thing you know, you see Venables walking him out the door to Bob Stoops' office, and the rest is history. So, yeah, that it's a pretty cool story, and that's something I'll probably never forget, actually, because it was wild, to be honest with you, because I had no idea who he was at the time, zero clue. I do remember reading about him after that in the Daily Oklahoman all the time about how he carried Fort Gibson all the way to the playoffs. So he was a special talent. And I believe they went up against Weatherford that year, if I remember correctly, because it was just special. He was a special talent. Speaking of special talents, by the way, there's a couple of recruiting guys we need to talk about, targets for Oklahoma.
Yeah, hey, Colton Vasek's flipping to Texas, Brandon. I don't know if you'd heard.
Oh, he is. He is. That's weird. Because look, I have a fairly decent relationship with Colton Vasek. He won't talk to reporters. His dad is not a big recruiting service guy. Doesn't like him. But I happened to get in there and build a relationship enough with him that he saw everything that was going down on the internet, on the Twitterverse, and didn't like what he was seeing and what people were saying about his visit. So he said, hey, I'm going to give you a call after this Denver Broncos Seattle Seahawks game, and can you please clear the air for me? So he gave me some quotes over the phone. We talked a little bit about some other things, but I thought the most interesting thing that we talked about on the phone was that there's this idea that he went with his family, and it's been reported by multiple people. He did not go with his family. He had a GA from Texas send him the invite, which he would get 3 tickets. He had planned on going and taking his dad's tickets. That did not happen. I believe his dad and his mom went to the game. He took 2 of his Westlake teammates because he wanted them to experience it with him. On the way to the game, he FaceTimes Miguel Chavis. You can find it on OU Insider VIP. I have the quotes exactly word for word what Colton told me. And he FaceTimes Miguel Chavis. Miguel says, hey, man, I get it. Coach Chavis goes, look, if I was you, I would want to go to that game too. It's in your backyard, basically, right down the street from you. But this needs to be a one-time deal. You tell me that you're not going to even look at Texas and give them the time of day, and I'm going to trust you, and you go ahead, do your thing. But after this, no more. And Colin says, okay. No more, coach. I'm not going to go anymore. I just wanted my buddies to experience it. My parents wanted to go. This was a way for me to be able to go and watch it instead of having to go sit in their seats and one of my parents not go. And plus, two of my buddies gets to go with me. So they went on the sideline, stood on the sideline, talked to the coaches, did all the recruit stuff. But he is 100% locked in. Literally the day after, he texted me. He said, "Hey, I just want you to know, Boomer Sooner." That's it, Boomer Sooner. And I said, "Okay, cool." And I had, at that point in time, I had no idea he had even visited Texas. Like, zero clue at that time he had visited Texas. And then our guy Mike Roach, who does a fantastic job for Horns 24/7, said, "Look, he was there. We're going to dig in on it." Well, Colton's not going to talk to a whole lot of people. And so he hit me up, told me what was going on. And so clear the air. He is going to visit later on this year. He's going to likely be at the K-State game because it's 7 p.m. kickoff. So there's that. He is also coming up for the OU Texas game because OU is hosting that game. So he will be an OU recruit for that game. He is also likely coming up for the Oklahoma-Kansas game because of who all is going to be there as far as official visitors go. Caden McDonald, Derek LeBlanc, Cecilia Kana. And potentially some other people. The Kansas State game is coming up because there's a couple of other unofficial visitors that may show up, and maybe an official visitor. We don't, it's not lined up yet. And I don't want to get in too deep in the woods there, but I mean, this player is looking at multiple games that he could be taking official visits. It's trying to work it out with timing of the family and all that type of stuff. If they can work out the logistics of everything, but Oklahoma's in a good spot for said player that is trying to, a very, very good spot for said player that's trying to set up an official visit, whether for the Kansas State, Kansas game, or either the Baylor game. Those are going to be the deal. But I think by the Baylor game, he'll be committed to his school. So I don't know. That's kind of ruled out at this point. So anyways, long story short, Vasek is locked in. 100%. I said, "Do you plan on going on any other visits?" He goes, "Yeah, to Oklahoma. I am not visiting Texas again. I am 100% locked in." He wants to leave Austin, he says. He's always wanted to see what life was like away from Austin and San Antonio. That's why Oregon was the leader for the longest time. Oklahoma and defensive end coach Miguel Chavis locked that thing down and flipped everything at the party in the palace. So deep breaths, folks. Don't have to worry about much at this point. Promise. Another guy, though, that has more interest in the matchup this week, very interested in the matchup this week, because this matchup could play very well into where this kid chooses, is Mr. 4-star athlete. Is he from Bellevue, right?
Lincoln.
Oh, excuse me, Mr. Lincoln, Nebraska, Malachi Coleman. Parker,
yes, indeed.
You're the only buddy that talks to him. So he literally does not do interviews, but he does them with you. So go ahead. Let's hear what's going on there.
Yeah. So as far as Malachi Coleman's concerned, as I had mentioned and kind of hinted at over the weekend, the USC visit is officially not happening. I mentioned that on the board last night. It was reported from a national perspective by our Steve Wiltfong earlier this evening. But the USC official visit that was originally scheduled for this weekend, the weekend of September 17th, is off the table. And instead, he's going to attend the OU Nebraska game in his backyard, Memorial Stadium in Lincoln, Nebraska. This is a battle between Oklahoma and Nebraska right now. There are no other teams that are heavily in the mix. Coleman's going to be a Husker or he's going to be a Sooner. If somehow things were to fall through with both of those schools, I would expect Oregon and maybe Penn State to make a late push for the kid. But as things stand right now, if everything holds, again, he's a Husker or he's a Sooner. For those that have been following my coverage of Malachi Coleman's recruitment over the past few months, this is a date that you have had circled probably since May or June, because it always kind of felt like this recruitment was going to swing on what happened in the game between Nebraska and Oklahoma on September 17th. Now, the reason being is that it wasn't difficult to foresee that Nebraska was going to hit some bumps in the road early on in their schedule, and that Oklahoma was probably going to be 2-0 in all likelihood by the time that they went up to Lincoln. So this season has transpired, honestly, exactly the way I kind of figured it would. I did not bank on Scott Frost being fired this early on, and that has changed things, certainly. But this was always kind of going to be a natural opportunity for Nebraska to get a leg up on Oklahoma, or for Oklahoma to get a leg up on Nebraska. And the firing of Scott Frost made some waves in Coleman's recruitment. And as far as his relationship with Mickey Joseph is concerned, and that relationship is rock solid, Steve wrote a whole piece on it and published it on the national front page for 24/7 Sports, wrote a whole piece about Malachi's relationship with Mickey Joseph and how they've remained in close contact throughout the process over the last few days. But the concern from Coleman and his camp right now is that, A, if there is a new permanent head coach, there's always the risk that the coaches that remain behind in the wake of the former head coach's firing are not retained. Oklahoma fans are well acquainted with this phenomenon, right? They saw it happen with a guy that played for Brent Venables in Calvin Thibodeau, and they saw it happen to the ace recruiter of the former staff in Jamar Kane. So no matter how good of a coach you are, there is always the chance that when a new regime comes into town, you're going to be out of a job and you're going to have to find a landing spot elsewhere. So that is one possibility as it pertains to Mickey Joseph's situation in Nebraska. The other possibility, and this is a very viable possibility, and I want to make that clear, Mickey Joseph could be the next head coach at the University of Nebraska. That is not off the table by any means, and he will be a contender. I expect that to be the case. But if he is the permanent head coach, the question is, who then is Malachi Coleman's receivers coach if he is to commit to Nebraska? Because naturally, it's not Mickey Joseph at that point. So that is the hang up right now. Some have speculated that maybe the commitment date gets pushed back from that October 22nd date. I don't believe that's the case. I think that's when you're going to have a resolution one way or another for Malachi Coleman. And as we've talked about, the biggest question right now is if/when Coleman takes his official visit with Oklahoma. Pay attention to that, because that will tell you a lot about which direction this recruitment is trending. Now, I will say this. Coleman is not going to take official visits with schools that he is not legitimately interested in. Right? He's only taken one official visit to this point, and it was to Nebraska in early June. He canceled a scheduled official visit to Michigan. He canceled a scheduled official visit to USC, as I just mentioned. And I would expect that his official visit to Ole Miss, which is currently scheduled for October 1st, probably doesn't happen either. So recruiting in general is an inexact science. And you don't want to make it seem like everything boils down to one specific factor or one specific instance. But that said, I think if you see Malachi Coleman schedule an official visit with Oklahoma, he's probably going to be a Sooner. And if he doesn't schedule an official visit with Oklahoma, that's probably your clue that he's going to end up committing to Nebraska and staying home. So that's where things stand. I'm going to be out to see Malachi Coleman tomorrow evening. Lincoln East plays a Thursday night game against Lincoln Northeast. The Nebraska staff is going to be there. The Oklahoma staff will not be, because they have an evening practice in preparation for their travel day on Friday. So they're not going to be able to go see Malachi Coleman this weekend. But his relationship with Joe John Finley is very, very strong. It's part of what has helped Oklahoma emerge as a front runner, and it's the reason why they've made such a surge as of late. His relationship with Finley is very, very close to as strong as his relationship with Mickey Joseph, and that's saying a lot. So Finley has pushed all the right buttons in this recruitment. Now the question becomes, what happens over the final month, because we are getting down to crunch time. And as I said, I don't expect that this thing gets beyond October 22nd.
So I guess what you're saying is if Oklahoma wins, you expect him to be a Sooner rather than later?
Here's what I'm saying. I'm saying I don't think the outcome of his recruitment hinges solely on what happens this weekend. I think it hinges more on how this Nebraska team responds with Mickey Joseph in charge, because they have looked flat and they have looked lifeless at times, really just as a general principle throughout the dying days of the Scott Frost era. So can Mickey Joseph re-energize this program, re-energize the locker room, and re-energize the fan base? If that's the case, that's something that Malachi is going to take notice of. And so pay attention, not just to what happens on the field this weekend, but just pay attention to the general vibe, the general aura within that stadium, how enthused the fans are, how much belief there is on that Nebraska sideline that they can hang with Oklahoma and perhaps beat them. So this is a very pivotal weekend. I would say more so for Nebraska than for Oklahoma. Oklahoma's in the catbird seat right now as I see it. They lead in this race. But Nebraska's biggest chance to reestablish themselves as the front runner for Coleman is this weekend against the Sooners.
I gotcha. So it's more of a if Nebraska looks good, they have a better chance than Oklahoma, is what you're saying. So I get it. I gotcha.
Yeah.
So everybody keeps asking me to give a shout out to one Ricardo LeBlanc, the father of one 4-star defensive line commit, Derek LeBlanc. And speaking of Derek LeBlanc, but first, hello, Ricardo. How you doing, bro? Shout out, Parker and I, that we always do each YouTube live. Speaking of Derek LeBlanc, there's some news with him. And I say that, and people that are not on OU Insider, they're instantly, their hearts are like, wait, what? Because I didn't lead up with. Yeah, he's going to UCF.
Yeah, I was about to say he visited UCF this past weekend, didn't he, Brandon?
Flip watch. No, there actually was a report out there, and literally the title of Ricardo with Derek LeBlanc. Who else was it? Who else did they have on the flip watch? John Walker and guess that gummit. Do you remember all three of them that they had on the flip watch? I think it was Jakeem Jackson was the other one too. I'm not sure 100%, but flip watch above it, like who's on flip watch? UCF, like. So I get like 1,000 screenshots sent my way over this, and I'm at Jordan Renaud's game. So I call Ricardo. I'm like, hey, is Derek at the UCF game? No, he's literally right next to me watching the game UCF versus Louisville with me. I said, okay, well, there's no. So I sent him the screenshot of what it was, blah, blah, blah. 20 minutes later, I get a text and he says, hey, Venables just called Derek and was like, hey, FaceTime me. Because he thought he was at UCF with his buddies, and because he didn't say anything to him, had Derek said like, hey, I'm going to go with my buddies, John Walker, who's committed there to UCF game with my buddy. No big issue. There was zero issue with that. But Venables is like, you didn't say anything to us. FaceTime me. I want to see. And he's at home on his couch watching the game with his dad. So, and Ricardo texted me. He's like, man, Venables hit us up. Like, worried somebody sent him all that stuff. I was like, man, it wasn't, hey, like they weren't very happy about it. So, needless to say, he's locked in. There was also some rumors about some other things with Derek LeBlanc, but the good news is Derek LeBlanc's coming on an official visit for the Kansas game with Tassili Kana and with one 4-star defensive lineman, Caden McDonald. Yes, that Caden McDonald, who has like 5 connections to the University of Oklahoma that are there right now. And like deep-rooted connections to the University of Oklahoma. As a matter of fact, if Oklahoma was in Clemson's spot right now, this thing would have been over a long time ago. But they're not. They're a 2.5 hour flight away from Atlanta and not an hour and a half drive from Atlanta like Clemson, South Carolina is. So Clemson right now leads for Caden McDonald, but Oklahoma's getting an official visit. And ironically, and the good news for Oklahoma is that Caden McDonald's going to announce soon after that official visit to OU. And he is very close, very, very close with one Derek LeBlanc. And so is a guy by the name of DJ Hicks, the 5-star defensive lineman out of Katy Paytow. So DJ, Derek, and Caden were all on a couple times this past week, have been on a conference call together. So there is a chance, and I hinted about this earlier. I fully expect DJ Hicks to be on at least an unofficial visit for the Kansas State game. I talked to his father today. His dad said, yes, we still expect to be going to Oklahoma for the Kansas State game. 7 p.m. kickoff works out great for us. And drive up there, stay the night, drive back. However, he is going to be at Texas A&M again this weekend for the Miami game. I still want to reiterate that we knew that was happening. Originally, he was supposed to be at his homecoming. He doesn't have a date to the homecoming anymore. So we decided, look, I want to go check out and watch this game. They're football. They love football. So they're going to go do that. But the fact of the matter still remains that Kansas State game is likely to get a visit for that, expected to be there in Norman for that. Literally 2 weeks later, they will be at the OU Texas game. They are 100% going to that one. So that's 2 visits for Oklahoma because Oklahoma hosts that weekend. The following week is where they're expected now to take their official visit. Oh, and by the way, did I mention that they don't have an official visit set up with Texas A&M at this time, or at least to my knowledge yet? And they are expected to announce in early October. So you all do the math. Follow the visits.
Hold up. Say that again there, Brandon. Say that again.
We'll say what again? Oh, that he's supposed to be.
What you said about the timeline.
Oh, yeah. Well, Steve Wiltfong reported it, and we've been saying this I've been hinting that it would not get out of the middle of November, knowing full well that I expected the announcement date to be in the middle of October for the last month. And we've been talking about on OU Insider over and over. Every time I write a report on DJ Hicks, I do not expect this to get past the middle of November. It's because I didn't want to ruin the kid's timeline and I wanted it announced. Well, Wiltfong got the okay to go ahead and say, hey, he's likely to change it to the middle of October. And that's or somewhere between the middle and early October is when the announcement is supposed to be. So if you've got 1 visit to A&M and 2 or 3 to Oklahoma, follow the visits, folks. Follow the visits. This is still looking very good for Oklahoma at this time. Nobody's ruling Texas A&M out. Nobody's ruling Texas A&M out. They canceled next week's Alabama visit to go to Oklahoma. So things are starting to look pretty good for Oklahoma with 1 5-star defensive lineman, DJ Hicks. But he will be at Texas A&M this weekend. And if they were to, he was at last week, he was there too for the loss to Appalachian State. So he's got a really close relationship with that Texas A&M staff. That's where that's where the connection and wanting to go back and visit again. He has a closer relationship with one Todd Bates and Brent Venables. So we'll see where this goes from there. But the fact that they've been on conference calls together with Caden McDonald and Derek LeBlanc and doing all this type of stuff and talking and all that stuff, things are starting to look really good for Oklahoma with the 5-star defensive lineman, and why I put in my crystal ball and started the way I would have put one in back in July, but I just didn't feel like it was set in stone. With as much as I talked to DJ Hicks's father, as much as I talked to DJ himself, I didn't feel like it was there yet. I mean, people can pat themselves on the back for putting one in early. It doesn't matter. It just wasn't fully there yet. As much as it was close to being there. And there was some murmurs that there was some things that went on at the palace, party in the palace, but it just wasn't 100% there, in my opinion. And so a few weeks ago, almost a month ago, we put in our pick. So, this thing's trending pretty well for Oklahoma right now. And Oklahoma's looking good for one Caden McDonald too. I think if he doesn't go to Clemson, he goes to Oklahoma. I used to think it was a Florida Clemson battle. He's going to be at Ohio State on the 27th. So we'll see. We'll see how this goes. He's not going to leave that far away from his mama. The farthest he's going to leave is Oklahoma, and that's because it's literally just a 2-hour flight. I promise you, like, the cold weather's not his thing. He wants to visit Ohio State, see what it's like. He visited Michigan last week, liked it. He said he had to wear a sweater on that visit. So it's just things are starting to look good. I don't know that they take Marquis Steele at this time. I don't know. I don't think Oklahoma's pushing for Marquis Steele. I don't. From everything that I've heard from the people I've talked to, I don't think they're pushing for Marquis Steele right now. So I think if they don't get Caden McDonald, they go in the portal to find that nose tackle, a la Jeffrey Johnson. That's my gut feeling right now. Any rebuttal to that?
No, I far be it from me to rebut anything you said, because it was all spot on. And I think that's your weekly digest on every single one of the Sooners' remaining targets, pretty much, with the exception of the Denton Geyer boys and Peyton Bowen and Ryan Yates. And you had a nice little in-depth report that you published Sunday, Monday, earlier this week about those two and where things stand for the Denton Geyer teammates. So
can I say something real quick? There's Sherman Johnson says two visits in 2 weeks isn't good, period. And he's talking about DJ Hicks to A&M. Taking 2 visits in 2 weeks. Okay. So his last 2 visits before these 2 visits to A&M were to where?
Oklahoma.
They were to Oklahoma. Okay. Where are the next 3 visits supposed to be potentially?
UCF?
Oklahoma. So I think he's just relax a little bit. Relax. Nobody's counting out A&M at all here. But the way things have been trending and other things that have gone on, we feel pretty good about where Oklahoma stands. Now, if they go out and they play amazing and kick the crap out of Miami, well, he's there with that atmosphere. Now you can start going, whoa, 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 getting a little nervous a little bit. So, but right now things are looking pretty good for Oklahoma. So we'll see. We'll see where it goes. Jordan Renaud.
Yeah.
Before we move on to Nebraska, have to talk about Jordan Renaud. He's going to announce on September 19th. I talked to Jordan Renaud. Like, I was the lone person he did an interview with after his visit. I went down and saw him the night before his visit to his game. Alabama was there. Oklahoma's going. Miguel Chavis is going tomorrow to go see him. I thought originally it was supposed to be Todd Bates. Miguel Chavis is going to Texarkana to see Jordan Renaud play against Texas High. So Oklahoma will be there tomorrow. They get the last crack at Jordan Renaud. And so I talked to somebody tonight around the Switzer Center. They feel pretty good about where they stand. And we've been saying the whole time, like, when I talked to Jordan flat out told me, I'm starting over from scratch. Like, Oklahoma, it made me think. They showed me everything that I was looking for and what I wanted to see out of them. I'm starting over from scratch. And now he has mom and dad wanting him at Oklahoma. The location, Oklahoma. We'll see. Oklahoma is going to be the last team that he sees in person. between Miguel Chavis, Todd Bates, and Brent Venables, I would not count Oklahoma out. Now, I still think Alabama leads. Maybe. I don't know. Like that's because Jordan and I haven't talked. We're talking Friday. We're going to talk Friday. So I'll know more Friday night, Saturday morning ish on where things stand there more than I do today. But I haven't moved my crystal ball. I have not moved my crystal ball. Neither has Parker. We still have it on Oklahoma. And the reason being is we're not getting caught with our pants down like we did with Anthony Evans. We already ruled this coaching staff out one time. We did it with Colton Vasek too. Not happening again. Not happening again. I'm going to trust this staff until told otherwise.
That's a pretty. What else can you say? Because they haven't lost a head-to-head recruiting battle in almost 2 months since Troy Bowles committed to Georgia on July 16th. That's how long
Facts.
it's been since OU lost a guy that they were actually pushing for. So I remain optimistic about Oklahoma's chances with Jordan Renaud, especially given the fact that the staff is going to go down and see him, as you mentioned, and his last 2 visits will have been to Oklahoma. So that gives you a cautious optimism that this is going to go down similarly to the Anthony.
Nope. I think we lost Parker there for a second, but I'll keep talking here. Are you there? Parker, you back? He's not
Do you
back
have
yet.
me?
We have you now. Okay. We did.
Okay,
it is
that
not
was-
an
that
OU
was
Insider
bizarre.
YouTube
That's-
Live without a Parker Thune computer glitch or camera glitch. We are back, baby.
That's so. Yeah, so I have no idea what just happened. I guess that's one of the natural consequences of broadcasting from your Ford Taurus on a cell phone hotspot. Is all of a sudden
You're breaking up, but I'll finish out what Parker was probably saying here. Look, somebody thought they were gonna. Somebody put in the chat. So Wilt Fong's going off instinct. No, look, there's some people around Norman that feel like the pick would have been Alabama at one point. Now there's some hedging going around in Norman as far as how they feel about it. Some feel really good. Some are still kind of on edge a little bit. So Wilt Fong's going off of Oklahoma, notoriously knows when they know. Now they didn't with Anthony Evans, and this is new territory for everybody. So when you're going up against Alabama, you notoriously go with Alabama when that happens. Like, I almost flipped my pick. But I said, you know what? I did that with Georgia because you notoriously go with Georgia head-to-head with Oklahoma. I'm not doing that again because this is a new era. This is a bunch of guys that know the landscape and how to maneuver around the dynasty that is the Crimson Tide, because they did it at Clemson for a decade. So albeit from us to sit there and question them, right? And so until Parker and I are not going to flip our picks until we know for sure this time. Lesson learned. Lesson learned. Is that kind of what you were going to get at, Parker? I think he froze up again. All right. Let's talk a little bit about Nebraska a little bit here while Parker comes back online. Look, these are 2 tradition-rich programs, folks. 2 of the best all time. Nebraska has played for 133 seasons, Oklahoma 128. They've combined for 261 total football seasons. Victories, 930 for OU, 909 for Nebraska. 1839 total. National titles, 12 between both of them. 7 Oklahoma, 5 Nebraska. If Oklahoma counted national titles the way Alabama and a couple of others do, you could probably Oklahoma would have 19 if I remember correctly. So essentially you could add 12 to that, it'd be 24. I mean, that's literally how historic both these programs are. Bowl appearances, 55 for Oklahoma, 53 for Nebraska. Heisman winners, 7 for Oklahoma, 3 for Nebraska, total of 10 between the two programs. College Football Hall of Fame inductees, 28 for Oklahoma, 25 for Nebraska, 53 total. First team All-Americans, 167 for Oklahoma. That's absurd, folks. 167 is for Oklahoma. 110 for Nebraska, 277 between both. Weeks in the AP top 25, 880 for Oklahoma, 730 for Nebraska, 1,610 between both. That's weeks in the top 25 combined. Weeks in the top 10, AP top 10, 624 for Oklahoma, 518 for Nebraska, combining for 1142 between the two. And then finally, weeks at number 1. I think this is the most absurd of them all. 101 for Oklahoma, 101 weeks at number 1, 70 for Nebraska, 171 combined weeks at number 1 between both programs. That is some absurd stats, some absurd tradition, some absurd history between both programs. Parker, you grew up in Nebraska. Talk to us about what you grew up around, what Nebraska Cornhuskers mean to that state, and just your being an Oak family. Your family went to OU, being an Oklahoma fan in the throes of when Oklahoma, Nebraska were just battling things out up until 2011.
Yeah, it's always been a fun rivalry because it's always been a respectful rivalry. And, there's so much vitriol that comes along with the OU Texas experience, but OU Nebraska has always had that mutual respect between the two programs. And there was always so much on the line when they played back in the 70s, 80s, 90s. And obviously it doesn't have quite that same luster in recent years. And it's been a while since OU went back up to Lincoln, but I'm stoked, man. This is my two worlds colliding. I'm going to have as much fun covering this game as I have ever. That's right. The Parker Thune Bowl. But I'm going to have as much fun covering this game as I ever have before. And, greatly looking forward to this opportunity to go back up to Memorial Stadium. Haven't been there since 2008 for a football game. So should be a phenomenal weekend. And I think there's so much more intrigue and excitement surrounding this game with Mickey Joseph, now Nebraska's interim head coach, than there otherwise would have been if Scott Frost were still on the sidelines. So that adds an
Looks like he stalled out again. I think his Wi-Fi, his hotspot's dying on us a little bit. Yeah, it does add intrigue. Parker's going home, folks. He's going home literally right now. Well, not right now, but he's sitting in a Love's parking lot. But he is going home. He's going home to Nebraska, getting to watch a game in Nebraska, Oklahoma, and Nebraska. It's going to be great. I think this is a scary matchup, honestly. I think this thing could end up being a heck of a game when it's all said and done because Nebraska has nothing to lose. Mickey Joseph has little to lose. The players love him already. So that's where he's going to win, number 1. Number 2, and I'm not saying he's going to win. He's just going to win the hearts and minds of his roster. Number 2, he's a Cornhusker. They literally went from one former Nebraska Cornhusker quarterback to another. This one, however, people don't remember. Mickey Joseph broke his leg. I think it was 1990. I was at the game. I think Oklahoma won like 45-10 or something like that. And Reggie Barnes hit Mickey Joseph late out of bounds. He didn't break his leg. I think he gashed it down to his bone, if I remember the story correctly. But regardless, there's history. I don't know how much love he has for Oklahoma because of that incident, but going from one Cornhusker quarterback to another, I think that's interesting. It's kind of ironic almost and how they had to go about things, but it makes sense because he understands what Nebraska football is all about, or it's supposed to be about. And I think that's something Nebraska fans, Parker, you tell me, they've got to get rid of this idea that you have to lean on Tom Osborne's guys to get back to those glory days. Oklahoma was able to do it by getting away from Switzer, Bud Wilkinson, all that lineage. They found somebody that respected the university, respected the culture, respected the program, that grew up loving the program, even though he lived in Ohio. Bob Stoops loved Oklahoma. And so it worked for them. Sometimes you've got to leave and get away from it. The best that Nebraska's done in the last decade, 2 decades, is Bo Pelini. He has zero affiliation to Nebraska, and somehow he won a lot. And they got rid of him. Probably the dumbest move they've ever done, honestly. But
yeah, well, it's certainly set that program back. And this will be my last comment because I don't know when my connection is going to drop again. So after I'm done with this whole spiel, I will turn it over to you to wrap us up. But no, the program, it still is so revered nationally and still has you're still talking about a blue blood football program in the Nebraska Cornhuskers. They just need somebody to come in, embrace the identity of Nebraska football, and re-espouse the things that made it great 25, 50 years ago. Mm-hmm. And Scott Frost, for whatever reason, wasn't that guy. I think there's a chance Mickey Joseph is that guy. But to me, I look at Lance Leipold as a guy that, especially with his familiarity in the state of Nebraska, could execute that same mission. And I don't think Nebraska is dead and buried in the landscape of college football. I think just as with any school, it simply takes the right coach and the right leader. It's a matter of whether Nebraska can find that guy, because they've swung and missed twice with Mike Riley and Scott Frost, and it's put them in pretty dire straits. This is as low as the program has ever been. So they got to get this next hire right. And in order to do that, they got to be able to look past.
We lost him. Okay. That's going to do it for Parker. So I'm sorry, folks. But hey, anyway, Parker, real quickly, we have you back. What's your score prediction before I let you go real quick? Your score prediction, do you have it?
Oh, sorry. I've been in the process of reconnecting. We made it an hour without any issues, but the last 10 minutes have provided a challenge. I will say Oklahoma wins this game 38-21. That's my score prediction.
Yours close to mine.
I don't think it feels like a
cool. 38-21 was Parker's deal. He's done. But anyways, I'm going to go 37. I got 37-17, I think is what I predicted. So, or 38-17, one of the two. I can't remember what I sent over to Nebraska 24/7 or Husker 24/7. Yeah, look, I agree with Parker. They've got to find another coach. They have to find somebody that fits that mold, that can come in and that's rebuilt the program and understands how to do it. Look, Scott Frost was at UCF at the most perfect time. And to his credit, he piggybacked that up to Nebraska, the program that is just, he idolized being a Cornhusker, being a Nebraska guy. But at the time that UCF was making that run, Miami wasn't horrible. Florida State was down. Florida was down. Like everybody was just down. And they're still struggling to get back up. We'll see how Miami is this weekend. Florida State is still back and forth, and so is Florida. So that's why you see programs like UCF starting to be able to land guys like a John Walker and a couple other players that are elite level guys out of the state of Florida, because the big three in Florida aren't doing well. Well, Scott Frost was able to use that, win, get some really good players, and then move on. Same with Josh Heupel, but Josh Heupel, as you can see now, is one heck of a coach, what he's doing at Tennessee. So I don't know that UCF is that same program now. I don't think it's a stepping stone program unless you're going to an Ohio State, Oklahoma. Like, I don't know that you leave UCF or Nebraska now because I don't think the programs are that far off at this point. Because of where UCF is located, it's just such an easy place to recruit to. But for Scott Frost, that was the holy grail, was Nebraska. Unfortunately for him, it didn't work. I think a guy like Mark Stoops would be a perfect fit. I think he would be he understands the North. I think Matt Campbell would be a perfect fit. Again, a guy that understands the North, the Big Ten region. I know Mark Stoops in the SEC, but he's an Ohio guy. He's going to understand. He's going to speak Midwest language and be able to land those guys and get them to understand the meaning of what Nebraska is. So to me, I think that's kind of where, if it's not Mickey Joseph, you've got to go after one of those, and one of the few of the guys that Parker named as well. I think those will be on your short list. Dave Rand is another guy, being a Wisconsin guy originally. I feel like he could be a nice pickup. I don't know that he leaves Baylor. I think there's little chance he leaves Baylor because he's just revered and worshipped at Baylor, and he's got that thing rolling. But I think you've got to at least give him a call. So all that to be said, lastly for me is, I think the key this weekend is Casey Thompson for Nebraska. I don't think Nebraska's going in here, this game, going to say, oh, they're going to slow down Oklahoma's offense. I think they know Oklahoma's offense is going to go up and down the field on them. I think Casey Thompson and Oklahoma's defensive front are going to battle it out. We expect the secondary to have some lumps, particularly at the back end. If Key Lawrence is healthy and Justin Harrington can play up to his ability to go along with Billy Bowman, I think things will be okay. I think cornerback on one side, you're really locked in at. Jaden Davis has been pretty good. He hasn't been great. So I think if they're going to attack somebody, I think they're going to go at 4. I really believe that. But I think Ford's up to the challenge too. I really do. I think he's up to the challenge. I think Oklahoma's defense, I think Brent Venable's scheme, I think Reggie Grimes, I think Danny Stutzman, I think Billy Bowman has a big game. I honestly think this is the game that we hear Jalen Redmond's name a lot. I'm calling it right now. You will hear Jalen Redmond's name a lot. I think the matchup between Oklahoma's defensive line and Nebraska's offensive line is intriguing because Oklahoma's defensive line has been so dominant in the first 2 games. I know Kent State and UTEP is not Nebraska. I get it. But I think, I can't remember, is it Schlee or Schlee? I think Schlee prepared Oklahoma Schlee prepared Oklahoma for Casey. And I even asked that question this week. And he said, look, there are all sorts of things that these pass run quarterbacks do. But going up against a guy like Schlee can help you with Casey. I think Casey's a better thrower. I think Schlee is more of a dynamic runner, though Casey can fly. I think that's something he's more savvy with it. Schlee is just more jitterbug, sliding it. He had more of that Vince Young where you just felt like there was grease on him all the time when he tried to tackle him. And he's bigger than Casey. So I think that type of stuff, along with Oklahoma's chance to make a statement nationally, helps Oklahoma win this game 38-17, in my opinion. Anyways, all right. That's going to do it for this version of the OU Insider Under the Visor YouTube Live. If you're not on Oklahoma Insider, OU Insider, 24/7 Sports, you need to be. Right now, 30% off can get you 1 year of OUinsider.com. That's $75, literally up front. $75, which is like, I think it's like $4 something a month, or yes, $4 something or $5 something a month or $6 something. I don't remember the exact number for it, but the point is that you get that, you get all of OU Insider plus all of 24/7 Sports. You get all 250 VIP sites. Alabama, USC, Nebraska, Texas, Texas A&M, whatever. You get all of them. all for $75, $1 from, and we've grown faster than we've ever grown. We hit another record today for memberships. We're one of the top 5 or 6 largest 24/7 sites now, and we're trying to catch everybody. We've only been doing this for 4 years, so we're trying to catch everybody else. When we started, we were like ranked 50. So we're getting up there thanks to you guys. It's all blessings because you guys, Oklahoma fans, have started to help us out, and you guys have become OU Insider members. We're blessed to do that. If you don't want to do the $75 or the 30% off, $1 for the first month, $9.95 afterwards. Give us a try, see if you like it, because we think you will. Everybody else signs up and has messaged us and told us, oh, we're signing up. We're going to upgrade to the whole year now. We love it. I had somebody do that today, actually. So we thank you guys so much for being on here. We thank you guys for coming on OU Insider all the time. And that's going to do it for this version of the OU Insider Under the Visor YouTube Live. For my man Parker Thune at the Loves stop. I don't know where he's at in Kansas, but he's somewhere in Kansas.
Belleville.
Oh, you're in Belleville, Nebraska?
No, Belleville, Kansas.
Belleville, Kansas. Okay. For my man Parker Thune in Belleville, Kansas. My name is Brandon Drumm. We will see you guys next week. We'll have a podcast tomorrow night coming out on, tomorrow night, Friday morning. So we will talk to you guys later. You guys have a blessed day. Peace.